numbering, and then that way he can just kind of keep going along and adding those things as we go along, so that maybe prior to that last meeting, okay, I got all these corrections, it's just one more time, so. all right.
Formatting, number, errors, things like that, and,
Right.
I can.
And then, well, if you had different decisions, I know, or different ideas about maybe something where you decided you want to change your mind on, like what's allowed in this zone, or what's allowed in that zone, or how many feet for notification, or whatever, we'll be glad to entertain that too, probably that first week, all right? So you'll have more opportunity to input stuff, everything's not in concrete. All right, sound like a plan? All right, so let's continue on then with item number 5, the introduction, review, and discussion of draft article number 11, signs article, which is,
I think I changed the numbering at the last
Yeah,
minute, and it
right.
keeps changing. I can't,
Right. It
I don't know
used to
what.
be 11. It
I
used
think
to
it was
be
11, it's
Now
8, and I think it might be
Okay.
back to 11, I can't remember, so.
Okay. The big thing, I think, part of your staff notes too, is that there was a fair amount of reorganization, but really no substantial, no changes, really no changes. If you did read your packet through, there was just a cut and paste there. Section 8.6 was kind of a repeat of section 8.3, so we'll just slash or delete 8.6, which is prohibited signs, and I think there's just some cut and paste when you were trying to work on that, and so 8.3 is really the same thing, but 8.6 is the cliff notes, I guess, of that. So, having said that, going through, so this would be the first page of Article 8 signs, which is the 14th page in the document. Purpose, it's basically, I see, no real changes there. So I'm just going to proceed through. 8.3 prohibited signs, that's where a lot of the larger changes were. Not there were very many of them, but moving like clocks and barber poles from one section into another, and just moving things from other more logical places. So, yeah, please.
Question on prohibited signs, especially on like 11 off-premises signs, temporary signs that we see popping up all around street corners. Who's responsible for enforcing that? Is it the police?
No, more me or another staff person. And I do go out and pull them out, but it's like mushrooms, I can't.
I know, yeah. Whack-a-mole.
I have, and
Right.
and I decorate the village manager's office with them, up in front of his door sometimes.
And then what happens?
If these little snipe signs, I just pull them out. I just pull them out, and, they get thrown away. We've written some threatening letters to a couple people, but there is a certain amount of enforcement level. I have been going out recently because I've been working from home with the hip operation, so I'm not
Yes.
here over the past month, but
Okay,
yeah, I have pulled them out, particularly right across the street here.
yeah,
All right?
okay, thank you.
All right.
All right.
I had one question with,
Yeah.
number 14, projecting signs, also known as blade signs. Is that, I guess, and I ran into this where I work, but what about like if somebody has like the open flag, is that considered a projecting sign then?
Okay.
Open flag.
Okay.
For businesses, they have like a little
All right.
flag post
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
an
thanks,
open, and
thanks.
it's really a sign, but then, and it
flag.
sticks out from the building, and I just don't know if that is considered a blade sign. Because I'm assuming a blade sign, it's got the 90-degree bracket that maybe, it's, somebody hangs up their shingle or something.
Does it have
but-
any type of writing or?
Yeah, it would say
advertising? Yeah, then
open.
it would be, yeah.
Okay.
Then, yeah.
Because I know like, it seems, and I'm not trying to dive too into the weeds with this, but, I mean, all projecting blade signs, I think, it may be limiting, I guess, maybe, and I don't know how I guess, I don't know. Because like if somebody has, it's like a post with a flag, it just says open, and, if you're driving down the road, you can see blade signs better sometimes when it's on a business or like a multi-tenant business, rather than, the sign that's just attached to the face of it. So I don't know, I guess.
You're saying
from a-
this is a little too limiting?
Yeah, maybe project, with blade signs. I mean, I could see, if it's, a size type thing maybe to allow some of that, but I don't know. That's just my thoughts on that, because I've had to deal with some of those in the past. And I know you also have to worry about, when you have the projecting blade signs, then you have to worry about meeting ADA requirements with heights above sidewalks and things like that, but if you have an awning and stuff, it gets a little tricky, but that was all.
Okay.
Not trying to complicate the whole thing, I just wanted to ask a
No,
question.
I appreciate the input.
So,
But I kind of, I agree with, it can be tricky, like you say, with it.
I can take a look.
Yeah,
A look.
I would probably lean towards keeping it the way it is, so. that
I mean,
my
would there be
recommendation.
any leeway to, say, a new business opened up in a, you know, in an empty shop, and they're just trying to draw business, can they?
We have a temporary sign permit for that.
Okay.
that would be more the A-frame though, correct?
No, there's a temporary sign permit too.
But, I mean, but then you couldn't have a temporary blade sign though, right? Because that's a prohibited sign? Or,
I'd have to see the temporary, I think the temporary sign is just, there's all different types of signs.
Okay.
The temporary sign. You
Yeah,
get
I mean,
one,
'cause
you
if
get
it's in-
one, and I
within
think
that, maybe
it's
it
at
would
the
be okay.
person's discretion. You know, we've had a business over here that's had the kind of flags in the ground, banners, it's just one sign for 30 days, and then they can, I think, do that 4 or 5 times a year. You know, take it down, put it up the next day. They need to get a permit every time,
okay.
all right?
Okay. I'm just scrolling through, and with the understanding that a lot of this stuff has just been rearranged and not necessarily.
Yeah, I did have one question for Carmen, that's 18 on page 3. It says signs that contain unlawful, obscene, or misleading information. I'm not sure about obscene. I mean, I had a case in another village where there was a sign where it said F, and it named a politician, and the neighbor didn't like it, and we didn't do any, we couldn't do anything, or we were told we couldn't do anything about it. You know, it came under free speech.
Sure, I think if it's, and I agree, but I think if it's in the confines of commercial speech, so if it's like a business wanted to have an obscene picture
Okay,
on
yeah.
theirs, then it would be fine. I don't see an issue with removing the language in the code, but obviously if a sign permit application came in, or sign permit application came in and it had something obscene on it, it would be considered commercial speech and not just private speech.
Okay.
And that's something you'd be able to deny just administratively. So I would say you can take it one of two ways. You can just deny it as obscene if it's just commercial speech and it's through a sign permit application, or you can leave obscene in here but only apply it to,
Yeah, I think the second approach.
The commercial
that
one.
We just would not
Yeah.
apply it to
yes.
what's obviously.
And that question has been coming up quite a bit lately, now that political signs are going up. I've had the same question about 3 times in the last 2 weeks, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that sort of falls in under 8.2, the substitution clause. Any otherwise lawful, non-commercial message. So if somebody, as a politician, is free speech and allowed then,
Correct,
yes.
Non-commercial message.
right.
Okay.
All right. Righty. Moving on, let's see, I did have a question that I have. You understand a marquee sign says marquees excluding those which are part of a designated historical building, that should be number 8, so this is B8.
Yeah, do we have any marquees here in town? I mean,
Yeah, the only thing, I was doing a little bit of research on it, and then they said, well, a school could have a marquee.
yeah.
So how you, if you define that, so they'll say, hey, you know, we have the parent-teacher conferences, blah, 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 so if you're gonna have, does that mean the school could not have a marquee sign? You know, I'm not really sure if that, because it says it's prohibited, and this was kind of, it limits it to a historical building. I get the context of it, like the Arcata Theater or something like
Right.
that, you know, you have something that's a historical context and so forth. But I'm not sure if marquee, the definition of that goes further into saying, well,
It's more like the movie theater type stuff. I
Yeah.
think you're thinking of like a changeable copy sign where they.
yeah, but they were alluded to, my research showed that they were alluded to as marquee signs. And so
Yeah,
I was-
no, we took the,
So maybe in the definitions, maybe we could have something that marquee is basically alludes to the historical type of.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I would
And the
think-
schools can still have, like a changeable copy sign. I'm
Yeah.
certain,
Yeah. So,
you know,
anyway.
so, all right.
That,
Chris?
I was
I,
gonna
you know, I
say,
can leave it in.
Yeah.
21 video display signs, is there like a definition for that? Because I can see a lot of people with a changeable display, well, that's a video display, and it's, especially in today's
Yeah,
day and age,
there's, I
there's.
mean, I should have included, I'm still working on the definitions for the signs and didn't, there's probably more definitions than what we need, to tell you the truth. I mean, there's a lot of overlap, on these, you know, animated signs, electronic signs, digital signs, changeable copy signs. I mean, I think we've got everything covered under a definition. I gotta go through, once we're done with this tonight, I'll see, you know, what survives this, and then I'll ensure that we have definitions for it, and I'll ensure that we don't have redundant or extra definitions. But yeah, there's definitions for all these types of signs.
Okay.
And they're pretty standard definitions, I will say, so almost any zoning ordinance would, like an A-frame sign, it's gonna be defined pretty much the same here as it is in, you know, 10 other towns, so.
Sure, okay.
Okay, so page 4 or page 17 of the overall packet is, looks like you just kind of, what was previously one section has moved to another section. Is that kind of the way it looks, and maybe some rewording of it. Things were removed because whether that's a new, like 11D is a standard practice building permit, so. So the detail is not relevant in 11D, and, let's see, zoning ordinance did not include in Article 16, this should be Article 15, okay. Basically, that's about enforcement, I think. So when I looked through this, I didn't have any other comments. So I don't know if everybody else has looked through it all and gone through this on page 5.
I just had one comment
Yeah.
with respects to on page 5, item F4, with the site triangle, there's no height listed. I know you kind of got rid of the height, but I think height is, there should be some defined height in there, because, you know, at a certain point, it doesn't really matter if you're driving a semi-truck or, you know, I mean, there's certain restrictions, and even like with the roadside design guide, when they look at height or sight distances, they, you know, 3.5 feet above, because that's where a driver would sit versus, you know, so I think we should have some type of height in there. That's all I'm getting at.
Okay, any suggestion for
I mean, I would say probably 3.5 feet above existing grade.
Which is 36, and so it's like 42 inches. So
Yeah.
this one says 30, so.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and the part that was scratched out was basically anything below 30 inches would be allowed, so that would, you know, so if you're sitting in the car, you could see over that,
Right.
so. But yeah, I mean, I think it's important, because if you're trying to go out and do a sight distance, you know, it could be somebody could, oh, that's a tree, or that building, or whatever. I mean, you kind of need some type of height when you're looking at the sight distance.
Okay, all right, I like it. All right, 3 feet. 3.5 feet.
Okay.
Anything else on that page? And then basically, talk about illumination. And 8.6 was removed, so, and after that, it's pretty, just, I don't want to say boilerplate, but it kind of just, the definition.
Yeah, there's really nothing
A-frames,
changed, it was just,
parking lots, and there's really no changes other than, you know, this was, the separate section was 11.8, or, you know, 11.8 was now J, and window signs. Just about, just a couple of comments in there about temporary sign, but really very little is there for the rest of the sign ordinance. So that's pretty, all the way to page 20, there's very little changes, so. I went through it, I did not have any comments or anything else to add, so, you know, welcome, Jerry. 6:56. So I'm gonna say that if there's no other comments, we're gonna wrap that section
Yeah.
up, and then you'll have another opportunity to look at it again when the full ordinance comes out, all right?
Good.
All right, okay, very good. That was item 5. Item 6, zoning map, farmland, and I got farmland preservation district, open space zoning, commercial zoning, and residential subdivision zone. So first of all, let me just state, the 2023 zoning districts that came in, we're keeping those. We're using the exact same zoning districts as was in the 2023. So the C1, the C2, the RD, that was all from, so we're not changing that at all, that's all the same. So, guess we'd just like to get a little, first of all, there's a little consensus too on some of the farmland zoning, farmland preservation was also a zoning from 2023, and, farm business and farm protection, I believe it was the other zoning district of it. And obviously, there was the open space zoning. And we talked a little bit about that the last meeting. I think our consensus was, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we like the idea of one open space zoning. There might have been some discussions of it, but having a sub-layer that then broke down, okay, this is Kane County, this is Canton Township, this is a covenant, this is, you know, homeowner association, whatever it is. But I think that the idea was on the map was to have one as an open space.
Right.
And then we would, if you wanted to break down that deeper, then you just go into that next layer, and you could say, oh, Kane County owns it, Canton Township owns it, this is a homeowner's open space and stuff, okay? So we're all in on that, does that sound good?
So we're really not creating additional zoning categories.
No.
Nope.
Exactly. And it's only, when you look at the actual, you know, GIS map, that you will see the differentiated properties. That's as far as we're gonna go, correct?
You will see one color that designates open
Right, this is
space.
open space, right.
District, another color for farm.
Right, but
No.
the properties themselves could have the tags for, forest reserve or
They could
township
be-
That would be
or
the
whatever,
sub-layer.
but
Right,
that's-
they could be
those are
open space
underneath.
for
Yes.
several reasons.
Right, so whoever owns a property can request that that tag be put into the GIS database. Is that
Well, it
Ma-
should,
sort of the
Yeah,
intent
yeah.
then?
Yeah, my goal is, the zoning map, I don't think I've ever seen a zoning map that indicates ownership, all right? So there's
Right,
a
I
zone,
know.
there's a zoning map, and what,
Correct.
I think the trustee liaison had brought up before was, or someone else was, you know, this, we, the plan commission, can change the comprehensive plan, and we can have another map, and there, we can have an appendix, just as a reference to ownership, but the zoning map
Right.
should just indicate
yeah,
the zones.
right.
Not really, I mean, and I don't think we need, as the chairman just said, I don't think we need to be, you know, open space would include all of the things, HOA, the whoever owns it, the easement, whatever,
Covenants, right.
that's all open space.
Right, it's one
By
layer.
the definition,
one
that's
layer,
one color
one
on the
color.
map.
Yeah,
But then if you want to get more granular, we'll have another layer.
We can have another map as a,
Right.
as a reference, an appendix, or put it in the comp plan
Yeah.
to show, or another plan, or whatever. I
And the
think that
idea
would
is that
be-
open space, that would be basically land that really does not have the intent of being developed.
Correct.
So when
Right,
someone
that's
would
it,
see
it's
they
to
go,
protect it,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that, well, this land is basically protected somehow, either through Campton, through the county, through a covenant, or restriction, okay?
okay. So now, the other question that comes to mind, though, is we have the right to put input into zoning or changes within our planning area, which is what, 1 mile?
1.5 miles.
1.5 miles outside of the village. should we be including any of those properties or those areas, or is that part of the comp plan?
Be
Bingo,
part of the comp
bingo, it's
plan.
part of the comp plan, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because the village doesn't have any authority to modify the zoning of those modify their district.
Okay, so,
Right.
so it's in the comp plan, then
Right.
this is our vision for those properties.
Look at it.
Right, okay.
And normally, the comp plan is just not quite as detailed, it'll say this is for
Right.
commercial development, or this is residential, or multifamily residential. It doesn't say this is R1 or R2, it doesn't go to that
Correct.
level.
Right.
But it will just have the broader land use categories, normal,
Okay.
normal.
Okay, thank you.
The one addition here, after the Article 8, which is the extract of the zoning ordinance for January, and in the staff notes, Jim noted out that this one section got cut off accidentally, and so now has been just, which we already went through, but really, there's no changes to it, but it was already part of the plan, or the ordinance, I should say. The Farmland Preservation District, not a lot of that, but still, we have some of that, and we like that, to preserve that, so we'll keep that in that, and that is one of the designations in the 2023 plan.
Right, in fact, the draft, the combined ordinance I'm working on, I've already inserted this, I can't remember where.
Yeah.
But right now, to put this back in, we only have 2 parcels. In the village, there's several, another half dozen or so that are adjacent, and conceivably, we would annex those, and then we'd have this zoning category ready for those. Those are already part of the, don't know the official title, the Kane County Agricultural Easement Program, or whatever it's called, so, all right.
Right. Then the zoning map was kind of thrown in there, I think this is kind of one of just page 36 of the overall packet, which I think kind of shows the basic, it's got a little bit more detail, because this one shows more of the open space. Really, it breaks it down by county, township, and homeowners and so forth. That this would kind of be the more granular level underneath the zoning map, right? Or like an appendix or an amendment, that's what it would kind of look like. Hey, a little bit different, this is different because it's the county, this is, so. I find that easy to read, easy to look at, and you can see, the idea is just to be as accurate as you can be. And that's why Kathleen Judy was brought on to help with researching some of that, and then make those corrections, so.
So I'll say this about the HOA.
Yes.
When I got looking at this, when we mapped it out, I had mentioned before about a potential threshold that any of these tiny parcels in, say, Fox Mill, these little slivers, we wouldn't necessarily need to zone those open space. But when you take a look at the map, most of the tiny parcels are adjacent to much, much larger parcels. So to me, in that sense, now I see that, I think it just makes sense to zone that all as.
Yeah, especially
as
even
open
like
space.
borders, yeah, like the county, like the, yeah, I can see some of the way they don't, it does border along it.
I mean,
around,
that would be, you know, a suggestion, or
Yeah.
we just set a threshold, but.
No, I like the way, I think it looks good the way it is.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives you a good
And,
picture.
and I'll
good picture of
note,
what it
just
is.
before I forget, there is probably one of the largest areas here, it's under Forest Preserve. It's actually not in the village, it always appears on the maps, and that is, it's right over here to the immediate west, I can't think of the name of it, but that's not in the village.
Oh,
If you-
Right.
Oh, yeah, Pointer,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just south of Route 64, that's, that's actually not
Yeah.
in the village. Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
but it gives you good context where the open space for the
Yeah.
homeowners association right next to it would make sense to, so. All right. Very good. Let's see. So, with that, yeah, go ahead.
I guess, what I would like to see then, Jim, is a map, if this is going to be what we're going to call open space, could we have one map with just one layer?
yeah,
Instead
oh,
of
yeah,
all-
That's the goal.
you will, yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Right, but I'd like to see that. to make-
Yeah, the zoning
Yeah.
map, so the categories in that legend.
Yeah.
So the Conservation Foundation, Conservation Easements. Campton Township Open Space, HOA.
Yeah.
Owned parcels and Forest Preserve would all be one color, probably green, or some
Yeah.
shade of green, and that would be OS. And the other color on here would be a couple parcels up in the northwest under farmland protection.
Right.
And then farmland is, we haven't really addressed that, this is really just everything that's zone farm now that actually is a farm.
Yeah.
You know, like this fellow's property, if it's actually a farm, it's gonna remain, it will remain farm. And I'll address the subdivisions here if we get time later on. But, so this map then would, instead of having, I don't know, 5 or 6 different colors, would have, probably just two, maybe that
Maybe
farmland protection, well, farmland protection easements in progress, those aren't in the village, so that wouldn't be, so it'd just have 2 colors.
Yeah.
And that's the goal for the zoning map, like,
Right.
this would be, so,
All right?
so there. All right,
I mean, I'd like to see that published sooner rather than later.
Oh, no, I'll
Okay.
probably, tomorrow I'll contact the GIS guy and I'll tell him just to change the colors on
Yeah.
the GIS,
Yeah.
a couple mouse clicks
awesome.
and it's done, you know, so.
Because that way, that's saying it, that's our statement, that we're
Right,
having open
mhm,
space.
yeah, that's
and-
what I wanted to get to
Yeah, okay,
a
thank
couple
you.
meetings ago.
Okay, we can go, I think we're all in agreement with that. Maybe we can go a little bit more granular here, is to start looking at some specific zoning and making sure that the zoning does reflect the property. So, and I think staff has brought together some primarily business zoning, which is trying to align the current use with the zoning. So if you've got a house that is strictly a house and it's not farmed in any way, shape, or form, it's a residential, you know, so we just want to make sure that the zoning matches the house and so forth. All right, so, first, we're gonna look at, a few parcels here. I'm gonna go to page 49 on it, which is basically the rezoning worksheet. So it'll be it will be 4N940 rezoning worksheet. Everybody will come with me on that one? So that's that strip along the Great Western Trail.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, if you look at the top of it, it spells it out pretty clearly. The 22 zoning was B3. Then the recommendation, or in the 2023, was C2, because they changed that, but we're gonna keep that same too. The recommendation here from staff is RD, which was like B3.
It is, yeah, essentially.
B3 was, RD was B3. So it's, and the difference between C2 and RD really is very minimal.
Right.
So it just shows you where currently that it's currently zoned as B3, and then we're just gonna put it into RD. So it's pretty straightforward to me.
Right.
Any concern that the next page also has kind of a detailed, granular, you know, step-by-step. Current zoning is like item D, current zoning is B3, which is being eliminated. The most direct counterpart to 2033 ordinance of 2024 is RD. So I think it's very straightforward.
Yeah, does anyone know if that's part of the Wasco Sanitary District?
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm just
I
curious.
have no idea.
I mean, which,
The Argo, it's that kind of light industrial.
just, you say you want to know whether it's included in the district?
Yeah, is it serviced by? I'm just curious, just for this chart here.
I would just only be guessing. I have no idea.
My guess, you know, from history, is that they were there before Wasco Sanitary District,
Yeah.
but whether that was part of the
Tied into it.
Yeah, I don't know.
original, yeah.
Yeah, I'll go
It
look
might
for
be a case where they're in the district, but they're not on it.
Yeah.
That's true,
Yeah,
too.
that's the,
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't know.
I can probably ask the district, could we have a bunch of questions, or
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
look for a fire hydrant or something, I don't know.
Would that be something required for that zoning or something?
No, I just for the chart, just
Okay.
to, you know, that we've
Okay.
answered that,
All right.
Yeah.
just,
I mean, it sort of indicates what the potential is for that property.
Yeah.
yeah.
The next property, which is basically kitty corner across the street from that current property, is 4 and 953 Old Fox Road rezoning worksheet. It's B3 to RD, which is basically equivalent. It's just a reclassification in name only, but it's the same zoning. So there's several shops in there. So this is consistent with the 2012 comp plan, and it retains the existing commercial tenants, and so it's just an administrative change. There's no changing into what's allowed or anything like that. Any worries with that? If not, we'll move on to the next property, which is 40 West 296 Wasco Road. And that looks like that one is, the zoning and the map was F. Recommended was to keep it at F in 2023. 2024 recommendation is to rezone to farm business. And I believe that's the one with the, like they sell feed and.
It's a feed and
Yeah,
supply.
feed supply and everything like that, which is seems appropriate for what that is. So I think that would be very consistent. And it's, like you said, one of the comments on the next page is under H, it says current use of structures conforms to current zoning and would remain conforming under the FD zone. So it's not, we're not creating a nonconformance.
Right.
So it's still conforming to what it's doing, so I think it's fine. Very straightforward for me. Next worksheet, 40 West 370 on Route 64 rezoning worksheet. Let's see, just kind of across the Great Western Trail from them. Once again, 2014 was B3, and then the 2024 is RD, which is the same. And I'm just looking over the comments for that, and it looks like it'd be consistent with the recommendation 2012 comp plan, retains existing commercial tenants, locally owned business, and it conforms to current zoning, would remain conforming, so we're not creating another non-conforming. Does say some buildings, however, do not conform to setbacks in 23 ordinance and 23 draft, but that would be, yeah, so that, the zoning would be compliant, it's just a setback might be a non-conformance and setback, if they'd call it a non-conformance. But it seems pretty straightforward to me. Once again, Wasco Sanitary District is a question, I have no idea, that's gonna.
Now, on these changes or modifications, whatever you want to call it, is there any activity that has to go on to make those changes to those properties, or do we just, is that just included as far as our activity in approving the new plan?
Ordinance.
Then there's nothing specific that has to be done for those properties. Or is there?
Well, I mean, if we're changing something, more of a general answer
Yeah.
here. If we're changing someone's zoning, like I'll use if they have farm and it's really a residential subdivision, or
Yeah.
change that to R, we should notify the property owner that we intend to do that, so they
Right.
come to the hearing.
Okay,
If it's something where it's E1, Estate 1, and we're changing to RE1, which are essentially the same, it's just to change the title, I don't think we necessarily need to. I don't think we need to do that, or we're sending letters out to everyone. So in some of these cases where I would say if it's B3 and it's going to RD, which is essentially the same, I mean, maybe we send a courtesy notice to them and kind of explain it just to cover ourselves that they were properly notified, but
okay.
does that answer your question, what you were getting
So I
at? But we
guess-
don't do anything with it just changes the color on the map,
Right.
and,
But at least you should notify the property owners that this is being done to their property.
Yeah.
And that the action taken by whatever we do is going to be the final word, and this is what they're going to be from now on.
well, we'll have a hearing.
Right, at the
And one
hearing.
of the, at this hearing, for the, which will include the map,
Mhm.
October 23rd, and for, agonizing this over today, so of all these things we are changing it, then we have to send out a letter, a notice letter to them, at least 15 days, 30 to 15 days prior to that hearing date.
Okay, that's
So-
why I was trying to
So,
understand
yeah,
the
yeah,
process
and they
here.
will have the opportunity to come here at the public hearing
Yeah,
and speak against it or for it or whatever.
Well, I was gonna say, if it's a zone that's becoming obsolete, do they have an opportunity to go to another zone that, other than what we're recommending for them at the hearing?
I don't think
Are
you get to
any
choose.
zones-
You don't
I
get
mean,
to
that's what I'm
choose.
wondering.
You don't get to choose what
Right.
zone you
Yeah.
want. You can't say, I'm gonna zone myself.
Well, I was
you know,
thinking
but-
more of just like a closer, like, instead of our DEC2, like, how some of these were recommended C2 and now we're recommending our D, can they request that because their original zone is obsolete?
Well,
Is that, I mean, I'm just curious if that's something they can
You can
do.
always petition for a rezoning. So you can always ask for a rezoning. If you want to have your business rezoned or your property rezoned, you can always,
Right.
you know, always
Or, you know,
request that.
they
Yeah.
testify, we take the testimony into consideration,
Yeah.
and then we either make a recommendation that is aligned with their testimony, or we say, thank you, but we still want to recommend, and then the village board is the ultimate decision maker on it, you know.
They have input in avenue, so,
Yeah.
and at the end, if the board does, they can always then go through a formal petition to say, I would like to go.
I think, you know, and speaking of these letters that are gonna go out, there will be an explanation. We'll have a couple form letters, you know, your property is being zoned from, or rezoned, it was, you know, C3 and now it's gonna be RD. And then it will explain, there's really nothing that's changing, or very little
Yeah,
that's changing.
because that's what they
And
need
just
to
calm people
understand,
down.
I think.
You know,
Right.
just they
Right,
don't want,
Yeah.
exactly.
you know, we have a capacity, I think, 75 in hearing, and I don't wanna be, I don't wanna exceed that for the public,
Yeah.
a public hearing.
Well,
And
is it truly a rezone, or is it just changing, designation?
Right, and that's why I just said, somewhere obviously.
Like a different initial.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Some-
and that's what I want to make sure that their understanding is, it's not that they're being rezoned, it's just B3, that nomenclature is just becoming obsolete, and this is the new nomenclature.
There is no more B3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jim. I think you'll have a form letter for that instance, and then you'll probably have a form letter for something that actually is changing from one zoning
Right,
district to a
farm to
different one.
RE1 or whatever.
And then the village already has, there's a page on the website that's just dedicated to zoning, and it has a lot of documents already related to what the zoning commission is doing. I think all of it certainly has the prior zoning ordinance. It will likely then have the proposed zoning ordinance in advance of the meeting. So I imagine the form letter will include reference to that as well, like, look here for more information. And then somebody can look and see, okay, it's going from C3 to
D.
RD. Okay, they'll see the red lines, they'll see, oh, well, this is pretty much the same thing. So
Yeah.
that will help them answer their
Yeah.
questions.
I think it actually may have been before this parallel with RD, I'll check, but Jerry's correct, I mean, not every, if we're just changing, like I said,
Administratively.
E1 to RE1, there's not gonna be a letter to those.
Your zoning is not really changing, it's just the name is
Right.
changing. Yeah. Okay. Pressing, I said, that's all the articles in the Wasco Village, or the downtown area that you had.
Right, there's a couple
presented
more
there.
outside, just to, I mean, these are, I think, pretty easy.
So I think that covers all of that, all right? So, we've gone through that, and now, what is it that you need, Jim, for us, or feedback for us to proceed on? Do we need to look at the maps? Do we need to-
If we, you know, if there's any questions, again, we don't want to dive too deep into,
Okay.
you know, particular parcels, but I think there seemed to be consensus on, we're going to produce a zoning map now, a draft zoning map that has probably just two colors on it, and all the various HOA and easements and Forest Preserve and Camden Township will be one color. So that map will become a little simplified as far as color. If there's anything that we're still missing, then let me know, you know, Judy or Kathleen, Judy, or me, or if there's anything you think should not be on there, then, you know, say it now, or we can, you know, discuss it later. But I think we're pretty well set
Okay.
on that.
Let me go back, I think I skipped over, page 47, which was basically the very first, picture, that came, 47 of the overall, which has the residential and the Kane County DOT, kind of overall picture of that area. And I think that was one of the questions that we had, was that residential lot. I don't know if there was a specific page for that, if I missed that. I didn't see a specific.
I didn't produce that, I just
And
did the
that's fine,
Wasco ones.
that's fine, but my understanding is that the question in front of us here is that this is a residential lot that is, I believe, is zoned F, is that correct? And then.
If I remember correctly, and it's, gosh, it's been so long since I produced this.
Right.
It's the back half it's one parcel, and the back half of it is zoned differently than the front half.
But
which is
it's one
unusual.
parcel, yeah, it's like split into two different
Yeah.
zones.
And
Yeah.
I didn't go on the property, but I, parked across from it. I didn't really see any business being operated there. There was like a horse trailer and garage or something, but there was no signs or no evidence of
Okay.
any business activity. I don't know why it was zoned like that, probably a carryover from long ago.
Is there a map in there that currently shows that, right? Is there a map up here in this stack of maps at all that currently shows that zoned as F or anything? I'm not really sure.
Probably,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
We'll take a look here. in a
But
second.
the question is, should we rezone that to reflect its current use, which would be residential, right?
That would be my recommendation,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's in a residential neighborhood, and everything else around it is R. And that's why I was just asking if there's
Yeah.
a map, because everything else around it is R, right?
Right.
Are there two pins for that?
When you say everything else, I mean, to the north, it looks like it's B3, to the south, it's B4, or it's being rezoned, if we're talking about the same parcel, just off of the Great Western Trail on Old Fox Road.
No, it's this,
This is off Burlington.
yeah, there's the
Gotcha.
Kane County Department of Transportation, and you
Oh,
keep going
yeah,
on
Empire
Burlington.
Road and,
Yeah,
take a look at the, take up a map.
Page 47 of this packet.
Yeah, it's a little harder to see the this is a
Uh-huh.
map, that shows
Okay.
the KDOT, and then that one small area, the tiny bit of light blue in there, so it does show it. To the north, it is zoned green, which looks like B2, and everything else around it is. That's why I like. This is what, 2012, 2014?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that, and it's hard to see with your
Yeah,
eyes.
it
that
is,
light
yeah.
blue. But then that would just be one that looks like it's zoned, I believe, I guess E2.
B2, yeah.
And then everything else is like, that's kind of a tan-ish, I guess R1.
No, I think that's actually, that's farm. That's all, it's the subdivision of his own farm.
Okay, right, right.
Or farming.
Yeah, it looks,
Which doesn't really.
looks like on the draft map, it was zoned maybe C2. Looks like it was maybe zoned as like C2 at one point. 'Cause it's that right there,
Yeah.
because that's the county that's, which,
Right now, I think it's currently, R, I'm sorry, it's F. This is a draft.
right, this was the draft that they never adopted.
Right. They were proposing C2, right?
Correct.
What was our recommendation, or your, Jim?
Residential, it looks
Well,
like.
residential, yeah.
Yeah. So,
The parcel to the southeast of it is,
the KDOT, that's the,
no, I'm sorry, just adjacent to that, the small parcel, which you're saying is F right now?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's that larger parcel to the south, just adjacent to it to the southeast.
just a little larger
A
parcel.
larger parcel. How is that one zoned?
That's all farm up in that area.
That's farm too?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that the whole wasn't it a subdivision?
Yeah.
Zone farm?
Yeah, we have several like that.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, okay, this is getting more confusing. Saying the whole subdivision is farm
Yeah.
currently,
Yeah.
and that's the problem, because it should have
Well, it's
been,
one of the problems. The other is that the back half is zoned
yeah,
commercial.
got it.
So,
So we changed it to farm and then we
Yeah,
changed
I
everything
have
to
handouts. We're gonna get in,
residential.
we're gonna have time tonight, it looks like the way we're going, so I do wanna get into the farm, the subdivisions that are zoned farm,
Yeah,
and,
Okay.
and we will
Okay.
hit that tonight, I think. We're moving
so I guess
pretty
my,
well.
so that residential area, I think we should make it like the rest of it around there, rather than making it a C2, unless there's some
Right,
compelling
it will
reason to
be
make
some
that.
residential
Yeah,
zone,
Right.
undetermined at this
Yeah,
point, but it will be.
KDOT, obviously.
whatever's adjacent to it.
Yeah, KDOT
Okay.
would be, what, C2, I think, was that?
Right, yeah.
C2?
Yeah.
That's kind of a no-brainer, right?
Okay,
All right, okay, I think that covers all the things that you had on, well, no, did you have the Wasco Nursery that, out to the west on 64, Nichols Lodge?
Question, with KDOT, if they were to abandon that,
That's the trouble.
would you, in other words, would it be better as special use or something like that? And if they no longer use it as that function, then it can go to whatever, be a better category? I don't know, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, that's thanks for bringing that up. I was gonna mention, it. So when we have these odd things like a school, cemetery or whatever, and they're zoned something that you think is rather harmless, you have to consider, okay, if they ever pull out or wanna sell, do you want that corner zoned commercial? Right?
Yeah?
Because
right.
I think in our code, all of these kind of public entities, they could be anything. So the idea might be to zone that something a little more restrictive. See where I'm going? So if they decide to sell it, whoever's gonna buy it at least has to come to the municipality to request a zoning change, unless they wanna do residential there. But you aren't gonna get maybe a commercial development in a location you don't want.
So if you wanted something restricted, you'd make it more residential.
Yeah, I would say probably one of the R zones, the larger, whatever, 2 to, says 4 acre, 2 acre thresholds, one of those, they're in the corner.
Do you really want, commercial properties there in the future, I guess is the question.
I don't know.
What does the comprehensive plan say, though?
I didn't do these worksheets on these, but I can see, and that can help guide us, inform our decision on it.
Because I remember there was talk about, shutting down Wasco grade school. That was something that sort of loomed up, okay, what, if it shuts down, what happens?
Got it there with you?
I
Comp
do,
plan?
just-
Yeah, see what it says up there.
This is that's the green infrastructure.
Right, yep.
Thanks,
good
good
night.
night. Let's see, Campton Hills boundary, land use category. So the comp plan has it as institutional.
That's kind of what I was thinking. It should be.
Yeah, but we don't have a zoning
but we don't have
category
that.
that
Yeah,
covers
I was
that,
just
so.
looking at that.
Right. Yeah, that's what the comp plan has.
Well, the comp plan does not have it as commercial, anyway.
No,
Let's
it
just
does
put
not,
that.
it has it as institutional.
Is that the current land use map or the future?
This is the land use, this is a land use map from 2012.
But does it say future land use, or they normally have a current land use and then they
It
have the
just
future?
says
one?
Campton Hills land use, so
Oh.
I'm guessing current. It doesn't say future,
No.
and this one just says Campton Hills zoning. So this one, actually, the zoning on the next page, which is page A38 and A37, it has B3, it has a B3.
Yeah, that's the
which is-
current
Which is
zoning.
basically
yeah.
RD, right, so,
Yeah,
which is C2 is similar,
Yeah,
but different.
Well, I can investigate, and then at the next meeting, we
Try to
can circle
clarify.
back and cover that. I think that's the only commercial parcel that we have in question, correct? So that'd be an easy thing to circle back.
We did not go to the west yet, Wasco Nursery, Deluxe.
Oh,
Auto,
those, yeah.
and Nico's,
I
so-
mean, again, I think that's pretty,
Yeah, I think those are pretty
simple.
straightforward. Those are B4, B3, and B3, going from.
Yeah, and I
east to
think
west.
whatever the recommendation was previously is appropriate for that. I think when I cut and pasted, because I had this, the commercial pages, a couple months back, and I was kind of trimming the PDFs down, I think I left out a page, but I think I had the recommendation for those. but-
Yeah, I think in the staff comment, did you make a mention of like Wasco Nursery being possibly a C2?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds right,
Because, right now it's B3, which would be RD.
yeah,
But that would probably be closer to C2
yeah.
than RD, light industrial, so if you're
Mhm.
talking about a nursery. So I think Wasco would be C2.
Mhm.
Well, I thought at one point where Wasco would have been like a farm business.
I believe that was one comment, was that do you want to add nurseries to the list of
Yeah.
permitted uses in a C2
Two.
zoning?
Yeah.
And I think that would be yes.
So the Wasco Nurseries in my staff report, I say that should be zoned FB Farm Business.
Oh, farm
overlay.
business, okay.
Yeah.
Which makes some more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Farm business, even better, even
That
better.
was because we
Because
changed
they're
the
even
designation
adjacent.
of what a nursery is, like greenhouse / nursery.
Yeah.
Because they're even adjacent to a farmstead.
Yeah.
It's not in the village, but Horton's cattle farm there, 40 acres, that, certainly the village sort of surrounds, but it's not part of it.
Yeah, yeah, and then,
So-
this, yeah, that's a good point too, it's adjacent to it. And then the other one's Nico's Lodge, the auto repair shop, and I have here the IDOT being zoned as C2. But we can examine that
Yeah,
C2 zoning
I
for the
think we got
IDOT.
maybe
Let me
something a little
take
bit more, yeah.
Another look at that, okay?
Is it institutional? Or,
Yeah.
Okay. Comment, Chris?
Just one quick comment. You were asking about if it's in the Wasco Sanitary District. In the
Comp plan?
In the comp plan, the facility planning area map shows that those properties in that area are all in the facility planning area for Wasco.
Okay,
So-
all right, thanks.
I mean, the earlier ones, not these,
The ones we were talking about,
right now.
where he asked if those are up off
Oh,
of,
yeah, no, the
Old-
ones along the Great Western Trail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've taken care of that page, in the downtown Wasco area, all right? So, want to get into FB
Right.
or?
Just the PUDs, we can do that now?
Yes, yeah, let's do
Yeah,
PDs.
so, in conversation with Rolf and Mark, I had suggested that for now, this commission essentially ignore anything marked PUD, all right? Because I think to go through a half dozen or so PUDs that we have and try and figure out what they should be zoned, you'd have to go back and see what the original approving ordinance was, and it probably doesn't fit neatly into any of the current zones. You have the Fox Mill, which is divided into about a half dozen sub-zones, so you'd have to be going through that. I mean, even, where you turn the corner in those commercial areas, it's different. So, I just think that's a task that's better tackled, one by one at the Plan Commission level. They've survived as PUDs. It will not, I don't think, harm us, the village, at this point, but I think for us to examine that with any level of scrutiny and try and justify that and go through it, that's probably another 3 to 4 months of meetings. I mean, really, when you get into it.
I think
I guess,
if you
I don't understand
Well, let me just real quick.
what the question
interject.
is here.
Well, let me just interject one. So you have a PUD,
Yeah.
and there's the potential of saying, well, what is that PUD? It's primarily R whatever.
Yeah.
And you say, well, instead of calling it a PUD, let's call it R1, R4, whatever it is, okay?
Yeah.
Problem is, PUDs were usually created so it could have multiple zonings within them.
Yeah.
which makes the challenge. It's not like you just had,
Right.
we're gonna have half-acre lots, everybody gets a half-acre lot, and we're gonna call this a PUD. That's usually not the way it works. They usually might have some commercial, they might have some institutional, they might have some density, high density, might have some large density. So if you're trying to put one zoning category on a PUD, it can become very challenging because the definition of a PUD is
Yeah.
multi-use.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went along,
Yeah.
I go along with your thoughts in that if we're just trying to put one zoning on something that already has multiple zonings within it, we're really asking for a can of
Right.
worms.
I mean, there might be, up north, there's a couple residential PUDs that might match up pretty well with one of our zones, but I haven't really examined the PUD or annexation. It would have been, well, it probably predates the village, but the Kane County PUD that was formed. So why was it a PUD if it met one of the Kane County zones? I mean, there had to be something odd or special or
Right.
different about it.
Right.
That they would process. as PUD.
And this is something we could always go, in the future, you can always go back and just say,
And it
okay,
won't hurt
you
us
know,
because the
yeah.
PUD ordinance will still govern. And
Right.
it's been governing for, 20, 30 years in some cases, so I don't think that's anything we have to necessarily wrestle with right now.
So that's one of the recommendations, to leave the PUDs as PUDs, and rather than trying to shoot.
Or
you know,
one, or
fit-
rather than
yeah,
try to put individual residential zonings on them.
Or each lot, or,
Yeah.
go through an entire PUD and say,
Okay.
well, you're a half acre and less, so yours is R1, you're a little over that, you're R3. And just
Yeah.
going through every single lot and doing, it's like,
Yeah,
Nice.
and we'll see that with the farm, that's the exact challenge with the
Yeah.
farm zoning, but.
so right now, PUD is, they're still governed by it, there's no changes to it. And I suggest that we'll just leave it as a PUD. I think that's gonna be the best.
So does that make it another zoning category then, in effect?
Yeah, I mean, or it is a zoning, it is a zoning category, it's
Yeah.
zoned to PUD.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, or is it that it's a PUD, but technically there's no underlying zoning?
The
I've
PUD
heard that
is the underlying
conversation.
zoning. The PUD is the underlying zoning.
Yeah. I have seen some communities do R4 PUD because that's what it's closest to, but normally I just see, PUD on a map because it is its own zoning normally.
Right. That was all along with the new zoning map that, way back to 2019, that I made the strong recommendation that on the new zoning map, it should identify the PUDs and it should have the ordinance number
It
on the
should.
map. So that way, if somebody looks at the map, they can go, that's a PUD, that's the ordinance number, that's how I find it, rather than, oh yeah, it's R4 or whatever, I don't know what it is, because
Right,
that
yeah.
stuff gets lost over time, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, people, the village and the individual property owners just need to know what's allowed on their parcel and the PUD controls. So
Yeah.
the PUD might say that certain setbacks are different, minimum setbacks are different than what would be
Right.
in what is closer to what the actual underlying
Right.
zoning would be for that
And,
lot.
and, that's my fear, is that we attempt to assign a zoning designation to it, and we just created several dozen nonconformities, the houses and the accessory structures and everything's off, so. For now, I just think we should
Yeah.
not try and tackle that, this commission shouldn't try and tackle that, and maybe at the staff level or plan commission level, we can pick these things off. If there's any low-hanging fruit, then do it at that level.
How many are there?
Well, take a look at the current zoning map up
I'm
there,
just
I think.
Like
and-
13, maybe a dozen or
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Like a
The
dozen.
only place where that may, where adding a zoning district may make sense is in some type of commercial district, so for like, something that's ripe for
Yeah.
redevelopment, so that at least, residential PUDs, those most likely aren't gonna get redeveloped, but if there's something with the
Yeah.
residential where maybe, from the village's aspect down the road, we wanna see certain things like a RD or a C2, you could add that, so then that way, if and when that property becomes up for redevelopment, you don't have that redevelopment zoning battle in the beginning where a developer goes, well, I want to do this, and, oh, well, we were just going to change it to zone CD or whatever, or C2 or something, so, but,
all right,
Okay,
so that's it, ready?
all right. So we in agreement with that, just kind of keep it? I think that's gonna be the best course of
Yep,
action for right now. Okay. All right, so that takes care of that. What's next?
I wanted to go over a farm, these subdivisions, we have several. I wasn't able to get all this done prior to the packet going out. Got it done about 5 o'clock, so. Just take a look, and this is not complete, but I want to show you, it's kind of a primer for next meeting, and I want to get your feedback now, and we have a kind of consensus where we're going. And you like one? I have an extra one. There we go. Okay, so if you take a look at the first page, I was hurrying here. This is on some software at home. And you see these kind of orange reddish boxes I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. And I'm just looking at the northern portion of the village above the Great Western Trail, actually kind of northeast, where these subdivisions, and they were subdivisions. They were planted, planned, built out decades ago in the county, I think almost all of them. And for whatever reason, they've been zoned farm. And I did speak to someone at the county. He gave me a little bit of history on it. To his knowledge, there was no special covenants or annexation agreement that said it had to remain farm forever, so. And these are not, I've driven through a lot of these, not all of these, but they are residential subdivisions. They're not farm. They aren't actively engaged in farming. And I think they should be zoned something else. If you take a look at the second page, so the bottom, the color one, was the Camiros recommendation. They went through and they started to say, okay, this is just one of those subdivisions. It's around, Whitney Road there, north of Brown Road. And so I just took this as an example, okay? So what Camiros had done is gone and say, okay, all this is zoned farm, and here over to the right, kind of bottom half to the right, we have the minimum lot size. So I think what they were trying to do was take a look at the minimum lot sizes, and I annotated those on the map to the top of the page. I went and did that today. So you can see all the lot sizes in acreage. So they were trying to match up. So you see at the top of the colored map, it says F to R3. So if you go and take a look at those lot sizes in there, they're right around 2 acres, a little under 2 acres. There's 1 or 2, there are 3 that are over 2 acres. So you see R3, the minimum lot size is 1.25 acres. And I think there's one lot that's 1 acre I have annotated, so that would be a non-conforming lot, which quite frankly doesn't have normally doesn't have a lot of consequences. And everything else certainly fits under that minimum lot size. Some are, like the one lot, you can see up there, it's 2.56 acres, Well, why don't you make that R2? I mean, you don't want to get this all a checkerboard of colors, it's just, the minimum lot size is just the minimum. It can be big, it could be 10 acres, and as long as it's 1.25 acres, it meets the minimum. So I think, Camiros' recommendation here, F to R3, is appropriate. You can go down, through this map and see the lot sizes and what they decided to change.
One question though, with something like that at 2.56, and if you do call it R3, then I could come back and say, as a property owner,
could.
can I split it in 2?
You
Because
could.
I got enough land to make 2
You could.
R3s. So I
Yeah.
got, so
Yeah.
that's my biggest concern is some of our large lots down the road.
Yeah.
How do you keep these 3-acre, 4-acre lots getting split up
To
into smaller
R1,
ones?
so, yeah,
you know?
R1.
Right. And that's, something we'll have to watch. And here are where do we want to fall? Do we want to make it have like a separate color up there, make that, that would be, not R3, but R2. So we want to have an R2 lot up there.
And it may be a 2.56, because maybe half of it's underwater,
Yeah,
you know, because there's that kind of thing where, all right,
Yeah, what's
we
buildable
couldn't
or,
get the most out of it by
yeah.
doing 1.25, so, okay, we'll make it a larger lot as far as the developer or seller's concerned, they want to advertise this as more acreage, therefore it's worth more, even if half of it's underwater.
right.
Are these the
So-
numbers that we decided on? Because we had made some slight modifications to the acreage on each.
But the square
designation.
footage, the
Yeah,
square
do you
This,
remember?
this I think came from the draft, or our draft ordinance.
Okay.
I'm
Because
positive I pulled that
because
out.
I remember us modifying some of these a little bit, and I just wanted to make sure they conform to what we
Yeah.
decided on.
Yeah.
I don't remember,
Yeah.
but I know we had a discussion on it, but I can't remember if there was a change or not, but that would be good to cross-reference.
Yeah, I will, but what I have over here, I pulled that from our draft.
Our draft?
Yeah, it's from
Okay.
our draft.
Okay,
Okay.
all right,
I just
okay.
wanna make sure.
I wasn't sure, yeah, was it
Yeah,
on the
both from
Caneros
our
draft
draft.
or our draft? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, okay.
So, so.
Valid point, Jerry, you know, if you want to try to prevent that from happening, subdividing.
But I guess, I mean, if there's a few lots where somebody adds a home, you also have, like you said, you have the environmental things, you also have septic field issues to deal with respects to, they're gonna have a septic field and well setbacks for the septic field. So I mean, it's,
And it also may be that the placement of the existing home kind of makes it where they can't do
that,
it either with. the
maximum
width,
lot width,
With,
I mean,
Yeah.
lot
Right.
width, I mean,
Right.
but even in some of these instances, if they split a lot into two,
Yeah.
what's the harm in that? So
There's
there's
still
one
acre
more.
and a quarter.
So, yeah, I mean, you're still gonna have a fairly substantial sized, you know, especially I understand what you're saying is, I mean, if you have subdivision where everything is 10 acres and you allow 1 acre lots, well, okay, that's, you know, but by doing what you're suggesting or what Camaro suggested, I mean, okay, maybe there's 3 lots here maximum that could be split out of 50. So, you know, so I mean, I'm just thinking, I don't think we have to worry as much about that. Because I think a lot of the people who do move out here enjoy the larger space. And if there's a developer who buys a property and wants to go through the effort and is able to do it, or a homeowner, if they can sell off, you know, a lot
Yeah.
split, but.
Again, I would prefer to avoid kind of the patchwork and checkerboard and
Yeah.
getting all the different colors, and if we.
If I'm right, that, like on Kingsmill Drive, there's like one says .3, another one says .8, so there's some pretty small lots in there.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about, I don't know if there's a house there or not. Like I said, I
1.3
didn't
or 1,
read it
it's pretty
through
small,
quickly.
okay. Sure.
I have been told, and I do not know this for a fact, but I've been told that some, that I think two in particular of these subdivisions are zoned this way due to a court decision, related to how
Oh.
subdivisions were marketed,
Yeah.
you know, a number of years ago, and so I don't know if it matters or not in terms of what we're trying to do, but some of these people, I
Mine
think it's
subdivision's quarter of it.
primarily the long, narrow triangle, or
Mhm.
rectangle in the middle, both sides of that. I think this was marketed to people as that property, and even the county tried to take that back. And some of the property owners went to court and got a judge to say, no, it's a property. And so I don't know whether that binds the village in any way, and I'm not sure of all of the facts in that, but, I think we should be aware of that.
Sure, and that was my conversation with the fellow from Kane County. He was not aware of any consent decree or court decision that would limit us in rezoning it. If there is a consent decree, my experience is frequently, they don't actually say what people think they say, when you read them carefully. And caught a couple developers trying to pull things that they thought was in a consent decree, and it was not. So I'd have to see what, if there is one, what does it actually say? Does it apply to every one of these subdivisions? I don't think so. And,
And everyone understood that
Yeah.
it looked like residential property from the outside.
right, and, you know, ask Carmen, you're not aware of any consent decree or court decision here, are you? I mean,
I'm not personally, but I haven't looked for one either, so
Yeah.
I couldn't say.
Like, I think our subdivision, was court ordered, you know?
Yeah.
So basically, the court said, yeah, you're gonna do this, so.
Yeah.
And if that was a way to, force the hand of the county to allow whatever development was desired, that a judge was then brought into it,
Yeah.
thus the court ordered designation, and at that time, who knows what F really meant at the county level, if F still really meant, okay, we're not taxing based on
yeah,
use, but on how it's zoned, or something like that. I don't know, I'm just trying to
Right.
speculate, but that's the problem, is the history of this goes back so far.
Yeah.
And the lack of restriction on a lot of F property versus residential. I mean, there'll be a whole new set of restrictions with fencing and so on and so forth that they're gonna have to accept by not being F zoned any longer.
Well, I mean, it really doesn't change. If you're on F zoning, there are some restrictions, you still have to get permits. You still have to get permits for it. So if you're in a residential neighborhood and you're saying, well, I'm zoned F, I want this, I want to build
Thanks for the
this. It's like,
comment.
well,
I
you're really
will look
not,
at that.
you're zoned F, but you're not you're not farming. And so I guess that's the idea, is that it should reflect what it is, so.
Right, but there's still the, you know, R1, R2, R3 has X amount of allowances versus farming has other sets of allowances that some of these people might.
yeah.
And- but
And
there
that's,
are-
and if you go to the next couple pages, I put together a couple charts so we can see the difference.
Permitted and special uses, yeah.
Yeah, so you can see F is down to the far right and all the residential districts, and you can see the differences in special uses and permitted uses for F. And I don't think, if someone has F zoning now, I don't think they're gonna be crying over, you know, not being able to have a museum on their property or a,
Large community residence.
right, or an airport, or a broadcasting facility. You know, those are things that are allowed, at least as a special use in the farming district. So, I don't think that will upset, you know, people much. I don't think that's limiting. And if you take a look at the final page, it's a comparison of the dimensional standards, and this is from our draft. And the differences, you can see, the first one, minimum lot standard. This, again, we kind of took this from the 2023 ordinance. So agricultural uses, that minimum lot would be 5 acres, other it's 2 acres. So that lines up pretty well with, you know, RE2. Minimum lot width is kind of the same as RE1. Maximum coverage, you know, there they would probably lose out. As far as setbacks, it's kind of the same. You know, if it's, assuming most of these are gonna be RE1 through RE3, I think they're gonna be the larger and more estate residential. Fencing, I mean, the animal stuff might have been a concern, but we've relaxed that. We've relaxed, or at least in the draft anyway, we've relaxed it. We've relaxed the accessory structure coverage. So all these things that might have given them an advantage to want to hang on to the F zoning, it's kind of melting away, you know? We're a lot more permissive in many aspects where people might have, you know, fought tooth and nail to keep the farm zoning, so.
Well, I guess that would be, because I don't remember the difference between RE2 and RE3, because I know we did have some restrictions on the animals between the two
yeah.
sizes. So in that scenario, maybe, you know, the handful of acreages that are on the larger side might, that might be disadvantageous to be a 3 versus a 2.
Yeah.
Depending on where we drew the line at
Yeah.
some of those.
Yeah. So, in fact, next time I will, again, I did this quickly today, but I will have the animal chart, you know, I think we had a table in there. I'll have that. Fencing you brought up, I'll examine that. I'll try and go through and and see what would change for someone if they have the farm zoning now, and it's gonna go probably to RE1 through RE3, you know. And I don't think there's too many of these farm areas that are gonna become, you know, R4 or
Right.
something. That's not gonna happen.
And
so.
this is inherent, this is the challenge, you know, when you have something like this, which has 2.5 acres and 0.3 acres, and, you know,
Yeah.
but we're trying to do the best we can.
Right,
to
and we're gonna
get that
create some
general area.
non-conforming
Yeah.
lots.
Yeah,
Probably create some other non-conforming situations, maybe a house setback isn't gonna be right, I mean, I don't know, but, they can still use the property.
Yeah.
I mean, it still gets used.
Just becomes
I don't know
non-conforming.
any way to go through and avoid this. And, you know, if we do get, information that there is a consent decree and we examine it and we need to back off, then, you know, we'll back off, but I just don't think that's gonna be.
So, so essentially, these were constructed and followed the county zoning ordinance at the time, but just the zoning never changed from farming to residential.
Yeah, that's kind of the story that I got from the King County.
So I was just wondering if there's, you know, like a PUD or something under, obviously, then we,
No.
or some type of.
And I will go talk to him. I was, you know, having my hip replacement surgery, and he was alone. They had a staffing gap, and they had a new person coming in, I think, at the end of August. And he goes, God, if you come and visit me in September, we can sit down and talk about this and go and pour over all of this, and, you know, so I intend to do that between now and our next meeting. And maybe something will come to light. You know, I've done a couple online searches for consent decrees or court cases out here. Sometimes those are hard to do, depending on what, you know, keywords you're looking at. But
I go back and see the developer original.
Right, yeah, and yeah, we'll go through and figure out the, they're not
Hint.
yeah, but.
There might be some uniformity.
Yeah, right, yeah, and see, you know, who maybe look at building permits, who was building the homes or whatever, and try and figure out what happened here. And I think all of these predate the establishment of the village. So I don't think south
been a
of
long
60.
shot.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think south of 64 or south of the Great Western Trail, there's as many of these. There's maybe a couple, but I think most of them are up in this area to the north that I've indicated on this map.
I would have to say, I do like the concept and the idea, like, first, of two things. One, this is a lot of the work that Carneros did, you know, so we're
Yeah.
just kind of building upon that. And then, so that's a long time of
Yeah.
investment, time and energy and effort they did this, and so, okay, so if we can find something we want to tweak, I get it. But I
Right.
think we should kind of try to follow that general guidance that they have. Also, the idea of like saying F to RE3, you know, just in that, even though they're not all conforming to that 1.25 acres, I do like that general rather than a quilt or patchwork type of, you know, where you're going through each individual parcel and saying you're an R1 and you're an E2, you know, or
Well,
RE2.
only if it doesn't affect, like I said, some of the larger parcels, if there's any kind of cutoffs between RE2 and RE3, where a larger parcel might normally be allowed something in RE2 versus not in RE3, then that might not be fair.
Well, if I'm looking at RE2 and RE3 on here, I don't see, if I look at the zoning district, I try to see if I see any differences, and I think they are all the same.
No, not
permitted
that,
uses
the
and
ones
stuff.
we were just talking about with the animals and the fencing and the other things that Jim's gonna look up for next time.
Okay.
Not in uses, I'm
Okay.
saying in some of the smaller
Okay.
animal uses and those
Yeah,
restrictions.
right, and then, you know,
Yeah,
So here's, so if you want to, I can pass this around and you come up and take a look. So this was the Camaros, one of their maps, and it just says areas of change, okay? So you can see all of these, you know, F to RE2, F to RE3, F to RE3. I mean, this work essentially has been done, and I do not intend to go through parcel by parcel. I'll take a look at each of these areas and I'll try and figure out, I'm pretty good at spatial relationships and everything. I'm trying to, okay, that looks like a small slot. Check the 2 or 3 small slots, does it make sense?
yeah.
And then go on. And then I'll probably just accept it. And if there's any questions, you know, next week, you know, maybe we can
next meeting.
pull it up and look.
And I think you probably have a couple different things here, because like, for example, Fisher's Lake or Lake Campton, that was developed so long ago that I'm sure they just left it as farming.
Yeah.
Zoning. Whereas when you look up the street going up Coron Road and you see, is a Coron Glen there, that could have been a court-ordered designated kind of thing or something, because that was like a 1970s or even early 80s development. So some of it is historic and some of it is maybe more recent in the more litigious era of development.
So, I don't know if this is something that's gonna require additional, assistance, or like something, or is this something you can handle, to looking at these things up, or are we gonna, because I know you've got your plate fairly full with trying to get the ordinance and everything completed, but, to try to keep us on timeline. You know.
No, I can, like I said, I'm not gonna go through parcel by parcel.
Nope.
I did, on this 4-page example, I went and clicked on all of those just to show you. But, you know, I'm just gonna be checking, I'm gonna eyeball it. These 2 or 3 look like the smallest. I'll do it, you know, kind of area by area here. And, you know, what are the 2 or 3 smallest lots? Click on those, and if it makes sense for that minimum lot size, then no further investigation in that tiny specific area will be necessary. If it kind of borderline, then I'll maybe start clicking at some more parcels or taking a broader look. But I have a suspicion that most of what Camaros did here will be
Adopted.
spot on,
Or, yeah,
you know,
okay,
pretty
yeah.
much spot on.
Right.
And there will be cases, like Jerry said, where someone might be able to subdivide a lot, you know? You know, and then we can,
Why not? I mean,
right. And, you know, I could also take a bit, I could take a look at the larger parcels too and just see, you know, how many of these could potentially be subdivided.
But I guess at the same time, it's still, if they subdivide it or split it or whatever, I mean, it's only a couple homes. It's not like we're gonna double or triple
No, it's
the
not
amount
like
of homes in a subdivision, so you're adding a couple here or
No,
there.
it's not like a
You know what I'm
600
saying?
home
So,
subdivision
yeah.
coming in, yeah.
Right, so I mean, at the end of the day, by the time you look at lot areas and everything else,
Yeah.
I don't think it's really gonna make that much of a difference.
I mean, I think as long as we're talking about minimum lot sizes for a zoning area, and I like the concept of having districts, or, you know,
Yeah.
areas rather than, you know, the patchwork.
Right.
It sounds, because then that sort of negates the concept of a zoning district.
Yeah.
So if we keep focusing on, you know, groups or areas, then that's, you know, the appropriate strategy, and
Okay.
say,
Like you said, there
go
might be
on.
some
Keep-
non-conforming, like, you know, there may be a couple lots that are
Yeah.
1.9 and then one,
Yeah.
1.25 or whatever, but,
Yeah, there are
Um,
exceptions, and
yeah.
there's gonna be forever,
right,
but,
all right. Okay, so, Jim, you're gonna just kind of validate what is Camaros?
That's a good
map?
word, yeah.
You kind of just validate what they've kind of did and said, yeah, I think I agree with that,
Yeah.
that looks like that's a proper rezoning, for that map. I'm kind of using that as a template, I guess,
Yeah.
and then for the next meeting, we could have that. And then,
But I guess, just so I understand, you weren't gonna, like, they broke up, like, on your second page, they have RE3 and RE1 and RE2, you weren't gonna do that, you were gonna kind of say, this is one designation for all of them,
for that
correct?
subdivision, or?
For that subdivision, or were you gonna, because they went down and did break it down into, like, these 6 lots in this subdivision, or
Yeah,
RE1,
Or
or
is that gonna be a
Makes sense.
case-by-case basis, you know, if you have?
I think what I pulled up here, I mean, to me, that's okay, that's
Okay.
fine.
that's
you
fine.
know.
I just wasn't sure, I just
Yeah.
wasn't sure if you're looking at, you
He
know,
just
all of it,
doesn't
or,
want RE3, RE2, RE3, RE3.
right, per
Right.
lot, no, that's fine, yeah, I just wasn't sure, okay.
Yeah. All right, so that good direction for you?
So the pencil markings are what, additions to what Camaros did, or?
I don't know where those came
You don't know
from.
where they came
Yeah, I don't know where those,
Some of these, I mean, there are sections that are colored and they're
yeah, that was,
marked on that, and then there's
on the
other
wall.
notes around here.
Yeah. Because they're working map.
yeah.
All right, what else? Is that it?
That's pretty much it, you know, we got the status report, and I can add, gosh, got
Let me
through.
go back to the, your status report, because you had a couple of questions in there. Just make sure you get adequate answers for those. If I'm gonna go, I highlighted a couple of questions that you had in your memorandum. Let's see, it would be page 12. Make sure I go over these. Page 12 overall, which I believe is page 4 of the memorandum. Yeah, so at the top, the second paragraph, Wasco Nursery should be zoned FB. We already went over that one, right?
Yep.
And it says ultimately could be modified to include nurseries as permitted in the C2 zone, so. And I don't have it says C2, it's as a commercial zone, if you want to have a nursery, it seems like a proper use of a commercial zone for a nursery. I would not have a problem of modifying table 5.1 to include nurseries in the C2 zone. Let's see, in the bullet points, I'm just going about the ones that I kind of highlighted. 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth bullet on that same page. There is a parcel to the immediate west of the post office that has two zoning designations, B1 and R1. I would suggest the entire parcel be zoned B1. All right, so that's the post office. That's a different topic. I don't think we covered that.
You're saying west of the post office?
Immediate west of the post office.
Yeah, so on 64,
Yeah, it's on 64.
yeah, it's hard to see this, but I can see an R1, it's hard to break it down on this map, it's pretty small, I don't know if you have a bigger, but you're suggesting B1,
Yeah.
so it's two lots right next to each other?
Well,
I
it's
can see-
one parcel, and again, it has the two
Oh, so
zoning
it's
designations.
one parcel with two designations? Oh, I see, it, like it says there, yeah, it has two zoning designations, B1 and R1. Yeah,
What's on the property?
Oh, God, I think there's a business up front. It's a business.
So it's the
What's
post
next to the
office?
post office?
Post office,
parking.
Royalton Builders.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
It's Royalton Builders or Carpentry or
Yeah.
something like that. They're
Okay.
remodeling it right now, in fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a small little.
Yeah, it was the
So is
country.
there an apartment on the top half? Is
I
that
don't
why?
know, because it's just a small frame house. It used to be a little tea room actually at one time.
so,
Vanderbilt frame.
so you're suggesting as B1?
Yeah, because there was a business there. I mean, I don't know why the parcel had two zones on
Two
it.
zones on it, yeah.
If you want it,
It's
I mean,
kinda-
if it was a single-family home there, make it, I don't know.
Well, I agree with
Something's
the
gotta
idea,
give.
if it's one parcel with two zonings, it should have
Right.
one zoning. So the question is the appropriate one. You suggested B1 because there was a business, there's a business there?
Right. Is there anything behind it, Jerry? I can't remember now. I don't think. On the same parcel.
There's another structure behind it or not.
I don't think so.
Could we tentatively say B1?
Yeah, we can
But
say
you- but
B1.
Why don't you
I'll
take a look at
investigate,
it? Take
yeah.
a look at that one?
Yeah, I'll look at that.
Investigate that, but let's tentatively agree to that B1
Yeah.
then. So we could see.
Well, so how do you handle mixed use in other properties where you've got apartments above and business below?
Right, because we've got the other side of the street that's
Yeah.
the lower level and then the
Yeah.
apartments on
How,
top.
how are those zoned?
I think the C2, the current
it-
C2 does allow mixed use.
Does it? I was
I think
wondering
it's,
that.
is there, it's a
Yeah.
PUD? Is that a PUD?
No.
No, or am I looking at the right road? No. You've got B3, and then there's pink. It's like B1 and B3.
Uh-huh.
The best I can decipher from the micro map that I have in front of me, but it's pink and red, so it's B1 and B3. Is the way of that corner where the opposite of the post office,
Uh-huh.
and that whole little triangle there seems to be B1, B3.
Yeah, so mixed use is allowed in the C1 and C2. It's a permitted use. This is in our draft. So if they're illegal or non-conforming now, if this is approved, they will be.
Yeah,
the
because-
units will be legal.
They will, yeah, because B1 is going to be C1.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, and B2 is going to be, but so
Yeah.
this would, B3 would be RD,
Yeah.
so. But if it's B1, that would be C1. And that would be.
Yeah.
So that you would be allowed that
Be
use?
okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Either one.
That answer that question?
Okay.
There is quite a
C1.
driveway that goes behind that little house. I'm looking at Google Earth
Okay.
next to the post office, so.
Investigate.
Yeah, yeah, I'll investigate, yeah, I will.
Yeah.
And the one question though, when you mentioned about nurseries into adding them to C2,
Yeah.
C, the one issue might be with that, there, you see a lot of nurseries out in the countryside. You want to have as a farm business, you know, okay, that sort
Yeah.
of fits the thing. But then if they sell and it's C2 or C whatever, and the person who buys it doesn't want to continue it as a nursery, but wants to put in other commercial, do you want to automatically make sort of a farm business into a commercial?
I think I'm looking at the different way around, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but I'm looking at it the different way around, it's like, it's allowed in a C2, so it has to be zoned C2 to allow that. So if somebody has a nursery there, like a farm business, it doesn't automatically mean that it gets to be C2 zoning. So if it's, a nursery's out there,
I just been told, I wasn't picking up that.
line of thought.
Yeah.
I think
It
it's,
sound like makes it all of a sudden commercial when it was a farm business kind of a thing.
yeah, but if you had a nursery on farm business, it's not automatically C2, so you can't. But if you got it zoned, hey, can I get that zone C2, and I still want to have my nursery there, but I also want to add X within the C2 zone.
Farm business is more restrictive, I think.
Yeah, right, yeah, so, but I like the point, I get your point, but I don't think that would be
I
appropriate
want to
there.
understand it
Yeah.
correctly.
Okay, so you're researching that, then let's see, we had, while in B1 zone, I guess that 1, 2, 3, that was the fourth bullet point. The fifth bullet point, within a B1 zone along Old LaFox Road, there's a residential property, is that the one we talked about already?
No,
The commission should consider a rezoning this property from commercial to residential, so, the B1 zoning along Old LaFox Road.
Fox.
And so I am at a loss to see,
That's right next to the Great Western Trail there on the north side. Correct?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
the
it says P.
big
does
blue
that say
house there.
PU?
The Victorian-looking
Yeah,
house that's
Victorian
painted.
house run
painted
by
lady.
a restaurant owner here in town, and I guess at one time there was a business being run out of there.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a flower shop or something for
Yeah.
a little while.
yeah.
I knew that was the Swanson property. maybe.
Yeah, but to my understanding now, it's just, it's a residence, it's a Victorian home, it's a residence. I would suggest it be zoned, change zone. The Wasco area is such a patchwork anyway, so I'm
Right.
not really concerned as I am elsewhere about this is residential, this is, C1 or C2, I think it's a mix, but I just bring that up, because to me it seemed odd, and then someone did mention there was a flower shop in there, but.
Part of me feels it should just stay as the B1 zoning, or the C1, rather than rezone it to residential, because it is in more of a commercial district, or a area where there's a lot of commercial properties around
Yeah.
it. So should that ever change use, what would the village want? I think we would probably want to see it as more of a commercial now, just given that
Yeah.
the surrounding
The home
uses are
demolished,
that,
Come on,
so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, if it's historic preservation, then it should be identified as a
I don't know.
landmark. But,
I
I
kind
don't
of
know.
go along with your reason, I think it's in an area where it could be,
Yeah,
either used as a business office
Right.
or something like that, and.
Sure.
Plus, what he did to it, wouldn't that make it non-conforming to switch to residential? With the changes he made to the property itself?
If we rezone it as R1, it would be non-conforming? Not if it was used as a residence, it wouldn't be non-conforming.
No, I'm just saying with, like, the fencing he chose and all the other things that are surrounding the property.
Yeah, I think, too, I understand that, but really a zoning, from a zoning perspective, it wouldn't affect the zoning, whether he complies with the fence ordinance or that, I think is a separate, but I think, I'm not sure, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're trying to say, if you changed it, then he'd be non-compliant, and so, but then I believe our ordinance has said if it's non-conforming, then it doesn't have to change unless there's been like substantial damage or something like that to it. It's not like, okay, now you gotta tear down your fence, now you gotta change this. It's
No,
like,
I
you
know he wouldn't have to,
Yeah.
but for him, but I'm saying if something, he sold it or changed it or whatever.
And that's what,
Because doesn't that make it,
I don't think when you sell the house, it doesn't change, it won't change that.
I'm sorry?
If you've got a non-conforming use, you sell the house, it doesn't change the conforming, it's just still non-conforming.
Right, the
But it doesn't
ownership
say, oh,
doesn't-
that's a
that- yeah,
condition
that-
of you buying the house, is you
Right.
now have to make it conforming. Now, if you wanted to add on make it twice as big, and then say, okay, well, now, that's a different thing, now you have to follow, and then make it conforming, so. All right, I guess I'm kind of tend to leave it more in the commercial thing.
Yeah, I
It's one of those different,
See,
it's one of those touchy things, you know?
Here's my thing. So it's zoned for commercial use right now.
Right.
We do not have, I think it's a charming home.
Okay,
I support preservation of charming homes. We do not have a historic preservation district. It's not a landmark. So there would be nothing to prevent someone from tearing the house down and converting it to some commercial use.
Okay.
And building a brick commercial building. That's my
but I guess at the same time, there would be nothing to prevent somebody from coming in and tearing it down and putting a new house up.
That's true.
You know,
That's
or depending on the zoning district, apartment complex, or some,
Yeah,
whatever
true.
residential we might zone it to, so.
yeah.
Again, I just see it as a residential,
Sure.
I just see it
Sure.
essentially as a residential property, so.
The only reason I said, I think it should stay commercial is I think way back in the beginning, we kind of talked about, when we were talking about land uses, we talked about the zoning should be what really the long-term goal of the village is, in compliance with the, the comprehensive plan, not what the current use is today. And I know we had a big discussion about, even though it may be, a hot dog shop, is that really where, does the village want a hot dog shop there? Does, is that more residential?
Yeah.
Type of thing, like just the bigger picture, not necessarily based on the uses.
Well, I mean, I've stated my case, I don't
Yeah.
vote, so.
Yeah, yeah. No,
I don't
I
really get.
appreciate it.
Done.
To me, that looks like an island, in the middle of a, commercial district, so I think it should be commercial.
And, I know people have commercial buildings in home, it's, builders,
Offices or
builders and,
Well,
you know,
funeral
The
home
C1
or,
would allow
Yeah.
it.
just because it's a house doesn't mean it can't become.
right,
a
Yeah.
residence,
right. So let's kind of leave it.
Especially where it is located,
Yeah.
it's in a business area.
All right. I think the last bullet 6, I think we talked about this, make sure I'm not missing anything. It says 2 properties north of Great Western Trail that are zoned farming, but their uses for some time have been commercial, suggesting F to B2 and FB if business. Was that on the old?
One we kind of got, the other is right along, so it's like an auto repair shop. It's zoned farm. It should be B2.
Yeah.
Just, and I can't think of the name of that street, it's like.
Wasco Road.
Wasco Road, you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about, it's right there, yeah, it's been an auto body shop forever, and it's zoned farm, should be B2.
Is that one of the ones on your?
It's on a map, it's in this,
it's on page 61.
yeah, 61,
Yeah.
you can see it there.
Yeah.
All right,
It's that long building, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, 40W288.
yeah. From F to B2 and F, and farm business. That sounds logical.
Right.
It matches the others.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I think that should answer all the questions that you brought up, Jim, concerning that, so I don't think I have anything else.
Good.
We made it through the agenda, and it's early.
Good.
Did we make it? Did we make it?
Want to go over the status report?
Yeah.
We
status
kind of
report.
talked about it at the beginning. Let me find it.
Item 7.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I hope Saturday, I'll have the ordinance assembled. I'll try and make the changes, there's not a lot of them, to the sign article, whatever the number it's gonna be. And then, hopefully by Saturday night, you'll have that. And it will also have, I hope, a chart that explains the reorganization, because I did wind up reorganizing this. I like the definitions at the end. Most zoning ordinances put kind of the administration, the processes goes up front. Most, not all. I just find that easier to use, and then you kind of get into the meat of the ordinance, and then you got kind of the odd chapter, nonconformities gets thrown in at the end, so that's the way I've organized it or reorganized it. I mean, really, it doesn't matter. But I'll have that to you, I hope, over the weekend. And then maybe next meeting, we'll have an agenda item where we actually discuss it. So we'll have next meeting, we'll have the first meeting in October to really discuss the entire ordinance. I'm not sure, depending on, because I got a lot to do with the map, but at some point I will, certainly before the public hearing, I will go through and have some type of chart or document that summarizes really all of the changes, significant changes that we've made. Okay, the things we considered, the keeping of animals, things we considered and maybe didn't change. Remember the zoning hearing officer, which we discarded that idea. Just to have all that in there. We had a lot of, well, not a lot, but there were several things like illumination standards and other standards that we decided probably didn't need to be in the zoning ordinance, so I'll kind of summarize all that stuff, all right? And I won't have that this weekend. I hope to have it to you by next meeting. Certainly by the first meeting in October, I'll have that, so you can see that. And that's just a guide. You're one audience, the public is another guide. Go forward to the village board, I hope. So I'm going to take a look here at the status. The other thing that we have not seen in its entirety is the definitions chapter. The 2023 ordinance had the definitions kind of bifurcated. It was anything that was a use was in, I think, chapter 5, and anything that was kind of like a standard zoning definition, like, what's a zoning lot, was in chapter 2. I didn't like that at all. I could never find it, and then they had other definitions sprinkled about. I tried to assemble everything into one definitions chapter. So all of the use type of definitions you've already seen, and we've debated several of those. The other definitions, you can take a look, but by and large, they are very standard zoning definitions. And one of the reasons I didn't think it was necessary for it is those are, what's a zoning lot? What's a front yard line? What's a front yard? Those are pretty standard, and I don't know if we need to spend like a meeting going over a definitions chapter. I mean, I don't want to be, we aren't writing a
Line
dictionary.
by line,
so,
right.
I don't want to do that. I mean, you'll have the opportunity to look at that, for a month. If there's any definition you don't like, or you think we need a new definition for something, then, you have the opportunity to say it. But I don't think we need to go through that chapter, definition by definition.
All right.
And for the most part, I kept the current definitions. In some cases, there's some minor wordsmithing, but for the most part, I kept the definitions. Like I said, they're pretty standard anyway, so. And so that will be new when you see the assembled ordinance. And, yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.
I think
So
that's it.
for our next meeting, you're gonna get a map, basically an over.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
the
oh, yeah,
standard zoning map?
so for the next meeting, we'll have a map of all the open space and farmland preservation. We'll have, basically, maybe just use the Camiros map on their changes, the farm to RE1, RE2, maybe have that. You'll have other kind of smaller maps where I kind of highlight, like I did in that 4-page handout this evening, taking a closer look. It won't be super detailed. Like I said, I don't want to go parcel by parcel. And again, we can go through just like we did tonight, didn't take us too long. We can go through, I'll try and investigate any consent decrees or court orders or whatever that might limit our ranges to rezone some of these properties. And, yeah, I mean, I guess I could get them to do a map that shows the business commercial that we discussed tonight too.
Okay.
Update that.
Yeah. Update that, so then see if there's any
Yeah.
changes or.
So I could have like a map of areas that we've already discussed, then the map of areas that Camiro's thought should be changed, or maybe with some minor tweaks suggested by me. And then the farmland kind of just remains farmland.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
I'm not sure how we want to approach that, and, you know, take a look at air photos and the zoning map and compare the two, and that would be it, so. Next meeting, we're maybe wrapping up the zoning map and getting into the entire ordinance.
And reviewing
And
that.
so we're in good shape for a hearing on the 23rd, I think.
Was it, you said, what I hear, 15 to 30 days notice for that?
Yeah, so for,
we'd have
I
to-
mean, we will have to publish the hearing, just
Before
for
the
a
October-
general, in the paper, 30 to 15-day window, you know, in Village Hall and on our website and everything. For, I think, anything where we're contemplating, you know, an actual change in the zoning other than just changing the designation, that's gonna be a challenge to come up with a list of all of those property owners and get letters out to them. And I'll have to have a couple, you know, we're changing yours from farm to RE1, farm to RE3, or whatever, here's why. So, some material that kind of, like, hopefully calms them down a little bit, you know? And same thing with maybe some of these C and B zones, although, again, that's kind of just a designation change we can discuss and kind of determine, you know. I think, you know, we'll err on the side of sending people a letter, put it that way.
Yeah.
And so that will be a task that I gotta do here, you know, within the next couple of weeks. And
That's your plate
you don't need
full.
to concern yourself with that, but yeah, then I think we're in great shape for a hearing on the 23rd.
Okay, very good. Any last minute comments or a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second?
That's it. All in favor to adjourn till the next
All
regular
right,
scheduled
look at
meeting, say
that.
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries 8:28.